Hello, my name is Sarah Hutchinson, and today I'm going to be talking about the Black Death and the history of the infectious disease. The Black Death, otherwise known as the bubonic plague. The modern history of the plague began in 1894 when Alexander Yersin isolated the causative bacterium in culture and identified it under the microscope for the first time. This allowed advances in treatments, diagnosis, and also the understanding of the disease. The plague killed 17 million people in Europe and Asia between 1300 and 1400 CE. The classification of this agent is known as zoonotic bacteria. Today, scientists understood that the Black Death, now known as the plague, is spread by a bacillus called Yersinia pestis. Transmission from this disease can happen in three forms: inhalation of respiratory droplets or small particles from the infected, unprotected contact with infectious bodily fluids or contaminated material, and through the bite of infected fleas and rats. The virulence of this agent is the ability to multiply in tissues of the host and cause death. When this happens, it multiplies until insects' digestive tracts are blocked. Then the flea bites another rodent or human. The bacilli are then regurgitated into the new host, and then after that the bacilli migrate through lymphatic system to lymph nodes. Lastly, they produce proteins which disrupt normal inflammatory response and prevent digestion by infection-fighting macrophages. The Black Death strategy for transmission relies on the colonization of rat fleas, which carry Y. pestis between the rodent host and humans. Once it's inside the human host, the mortality rates are 100% without getting any antibiotic treatments. There are three forms of the plague, known as the bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic plague. Now I'm going to talk about the host information of the Black Death. The original carrier of the plague infected fleas thought to be responsible for the Black Death was the black rat. However, that was incorrect. The bacterium Yersinia pestis was commonly endemic in only a few rodent species and transmitted zoonotically by the rat flea. Other animals such as brown rats, dogs, cats, and humans may also suffer from the plague. The Black Death pandemic that took place in Europe between 1347 and 1351 took the greatest toll on life than any other known epidemic or war up to that time period. The different plague recurrences happened between 1361 and 63, 1369 and 71 through 71, 1374 through 75, 1390 and 1400. There are several individual risk factors as well from the Black Death. One can be bitten by fleas as well as exposed to rodents. Simply getting scratches or bites from an infected animal, and also coming into contact with anybody suffering from pneumonic plague is a very crucial risk for infection. The signs and symptoms of the Black Death happen in three forms: the bubonic, septicemic, and pneumonic plague. The bubonic plague is when bacteria infiltrates the lymph nodes, causing enlarged, painful, tender lymph nodes called buboles. This causes flu-like symptoms, and without treatment, it will spread to other areas of the body. Septicemic plague happens when bacteria enters the bloodstream. This can occur on its own, or it may also develop from bubonic plague. The septicemic plague symptoms cause fever, chills, weakness, abdominal pain, and shock. There can also be bleeding and tissue death, especially of the fingers and toes. Dying tissues may appear black, hence the name Black Death, and that's where that originated from. The pneumonic plague symptoms of other types of plague can be present, but characteristic clinical picture of the pneumonia is actually present. This happens when bacteria spread to the lungs or infect the lungs directly when infected droplets in the air are inhaled by somebody. This is the only form of plague that can be transmitted from person to person. The pneumonic plague causes shortness of breath, chest pain, fever, and cough with watery or bloody mucus production. Finally, I'm going to talk about the environmental information of the Black Death. Research suggests that the plague was introduced into Europe multiple times, coming along trade routes and waves from Central Asia as a result of climate fluctuations affecting population of rodents infested with plague-carrying fleas. Fleas and rats were particularly at home aboard ships of all kinds. This is how the deadly plague made its way through European ports one after another. The spread of the infection among wild or domestic rodents in the same vicinity of human habitations creates these conditions for the outbreaks to happen. Thus is what caused the pandemics. The Black Death originated first in Asia. It arrived in the Mediterranean harbors of Europe in 1347 CE via the land and sea trade routes of the ancient Silk Road system. The facultative anaerobic organism that can infect humans via the central rat flea is known as this plague. The Oriental rat flea, which is the main cause of the Black Death, is the primary vector for the transmission of Bacterium Yersinia pestis between rats and humans. These are the links to the following references where I found my information and some supporting facts. Thank you for listening today, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.